Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Erica Morin, and I'm the Manager of Training and Member Services at MSIC. Today, MSIC is presenting a virtual training session to learn about various social engineering attacks and the techniques to protect your credit union and yourself. We are pleased to have Buckley Technology Group, also known as BTG, here with us today to provide you the strategies to help modify your behavior to prevent social engineering attacks from coming to fruition. BTG is a Massachusetts-based leading provider of information security and compliance solutions for credit unions nationwide. And today we will be hearing from Jennifer Conley-McGee, a senior compliance consultant at BTG. Jen works closely with clients in the areas of vendor management, information security, and business continuity and disaster recovery. With over 15 years in the financial services industry with a background in enterprise risk management, Jen provides a practical approach to meeting compliance requirements. Just a quick note about today's format. Following Jen's presentation, there will be time for a Q&A, so please feel free to send your questions during the presentation via the chat box found in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. It's listed as Q&A. If you don't see Q&A, you'll see a little box that says chat, and that will bring you there. And then once Jen concludes her presentations, we will address all the questions and do that during that time period. And Jen, with that, I will hand it over to you. Let me just give you the screen.
Great, thank you. All right, so good morning, everyone. And thank you for being here today to view our Cybercrime and Social Engineering, the Human Hack presentation. Our agenda today will address multiple topics, including why you should be well informed of cybersecurity risk and social engineering threats, cybersecurity trends and threats that the credit unions are tasked with mitigating today. We will also review some real-life social engineering case studies to help bring our discussion today to reality, and identify social engineering red flags to assist the credit union and your employees how to avoid becoming the victim of a human hack. And as Erica mentioned, at the end of our presentation, we'll open the forum for Q&A. So without further ado, let's dive in. First, we'd like to review why it's important to be well informed of cybersecurity and social engineering risks. At BTG, we like to say avoid the avalanche, meaning the cybersecurity concerns can start small, but eventually begin to grow into other concerns and risks. Our goal is to help you avoid the avalanche effect. Credit union concerns not only involve cybersecurity training, but also meeting regulatory requirements, being knowledgeable of how to avoid risk, improving operations and controls, all while still remaining competitive in the industry. In our next section, we're going to explore various types of cyber threats and trends that continue to gain momentum. These threats are specific cyber threats we know credit unions are monitoring for every day. Cyber criminals will always take advantage of an opportunity to exploit information when a weakness is identified. Social engineering is a general term used to describe various cyber attacks. These attacks rely on human interaction to gain access to sensitive information. Some examples of social engineering that we'll cover today include phishing, smishing, and vishing. Yes, those are the technical names. And other cyber threats we'll review include ransomware, business email compromise, corporate account takeover, Internet of Things, the dark web, and work from home. Our first type of threat we'll review are types of social engineering attacks. Phishing, also known as spear phishing, smishing, and vishing. These cyber attacks are very common and used to solicit sensitive information through various communication methods. One way an attacker will gain access is by providing a bogus link or website where the victim will need to enter login credentials or download attachments with malware. Email attacks can also be in the form of a spoofed email requesting information or containing links or attachments with malware. Spoofed emails are email addresses that appear to be authentic, however may contain a missing letter, added punctuation, or an incorrect domain name. Later in our presentation, we will review how to identify those red flags within email communications and also go over some email security best practices to help you gain more awareness when it comes to these email threats. Smishing is essentially text message phishing. In these incidents, the victims will receive a text message requesting information to be confirmed via a spoofed link or callback to a criminal call center. And lastly, we have vishing. Vishing is carried out by either a robocall or voice messaging system directing the victim to return a call to their criminal call center where they will then be asked to provide information. Once a social engineering attack is successful, the attacker may execute a ransomware attack. Ransomware is a type of malware that is downloaded by clicking on a compromised link or downloading an attachment. The malware is intended to lock the user out of their systems and encrypt files until a ransom is paid. Ransomware is a cyber threat that is a growing trend in our industry. Criminals are able to outsource the ransomware attacks via ransomware as a service offerings on the dark web for as little as $100 to $3,000, depending on the type of data that's expected to be retrieved from the attack. Perhaps the most concerning aspect of ransomware is that from the time of initial infection, so the time of the download, to actual encryption, the time the ransom demand is made, could be an average of 3 days to several weeks. So that means a successful ransomware attacker has been creeping within your credit union systems, gathering information for an extended period of time before ever making its demands. Our next cyber threat, business email compromise, has been a hot button within the industry. So much so that the FBI has released an advisory specific to this threat to increase awareness. Business email compromise occurs when an attacker gains login access to a corporate email account and then poses as a member of executive or senior management or as a third-party vendor. There's two types of examples for business email compromise. An example of an internal compromise would be if the email account of the CFO is hacked, in which the attacker then sends accounting staff requests to send emergency wire transfers or conduct other fraudulent transactions within the institution. An example of an external compromise would be an email account for a third-party vendor that's hacked, in which the supposed vendor sends the credit union a fraudulent request to update payment information. In turn, that payment information is directed to the hacker's account. We will review business email compromise in more detail with our real-life case studies a little bit later in our presentation. Corporate account takeover is similar to business email compromise. However, this type of cyber threat includes the compromise of login credentials to critical systems and applications, such as payment processing systems like wire transfers, ACH, bill pay, online banking, and so on. Once those login credentials have been verified as successful, the attacker can then conduct fraudulent transactions, change employee access controls and system settings, and steal other sensitive information and data. Therefore, employees with access to back office processing applications should be on high alert for this type of threat. It is even more of a reminder as to why it's so important to keep your passwords secure to yourself and ensure monitoring and activity logs are reviewed regularly to identify suspicious activity early on. Internet of Things is a threat that continues to evolve as technology advances and grow. This threat includes devices and everyday objects we use that have network connectivity through the Wi-Fi or internet. So think of your printers, copy machines, smartphones, smart security devices such as your doorbell cameras, smart locks, heck, even smart appliances and fitness trackers. Hackers will attempt to compromise these devices through known vulnerabilities to gain access to critical systems and data. Once access is achieved, the hacker can then steal confidential information and use it to their advantage. That being said, it's important to ensure internet connection to these devices is always on a secure internet connection. The next cyber threat is the dark web. The dark web is a scary place for those of us just trying to keep our cybersecurity together. It offers cybercriminals a platform to sell information and offer cybercrime services, as well as other fake products, even including a fake COVID-19 vaccine. The dark web is a $1.5 trillion industry. Top purchases on the dark web are fulls, which include all the information needed to commit true identity theft, including your name, date of birth, social security number, account numbers, credit card info, and more. All of your information is sold at the bargain price of $8. For about $1 to $5, a criminal can purchase login credentials. That price is determined by the data available for access. And your credit and debit card data goes for just $1 to $3. So while the cost of this information being sold is relatively low, keep in mind that these hackers are likely selling hundreds, if not more, pieces of information collected from data breaches, so their profits are huge. Our last cyber threat we will review today is work from home. As many of you likely experienced due to the pandemic, work from home opportunities have increased. The growth of the remote workforce has expanded the credit union cybersecurity risk, and as a result, the NCUA has issued 2 supervisory letters, one in July of 2020 and one in January of 2021, specifically addressing the need to review the associated risks of work from home. The cause for these increased cyber risks include the possibility of a remote worker using an unsecured network and/or Wi-Fi vulnerabilities, unpatched and unmanaged personal laptops and computers. If the use of personal devices is allowed, the credit union should ensure a patch management monitoring process is in place and security updates are applied as necessary by the employee. The next area of weakness includes the need to change data and application settings in order to allow access outside of the network. With this threat, it's important the credit union reviews account monitoring and access reports more frequently to catch suspicious activity. And lastly, the lack of security testing and activity log monitoring. Testing should be performed more frequently and reviewed to identify suspicious activity sooner. Now that we've reviewed social engineering and cyber threats, there are some key takeaways I'd like to call to your attention. First, a successful social engineering attempt leads to breaches, a social engineering attack leads to breaches and compromises systems and data. Awareness is key for mitigation, and social engineering attacks and cybercrime can and will happen. The severity of the impact is up to you. In the following slides, BTG is going to share some real-life case studies of social engineering attacks that occurred due to an exploited vulnerability that then led to data theft and fraudulent transactions, to put these threats into perspective. As we go through these examples, keep in mind that the fallout of social engineering attacks can take months to discover, depending on the time period between the initial infection to detection or demand from a cybercriminal. The first case is from the Toyota Boshuku Corporation. They are an auto parts manufacturer for Toyota. Unfortunately, the company suffered a $37 million loss due to a business compromise email scam. In August of 2019, attackers used a compromised vendor email account to request a change to account information for an electronic funds transfer payment. Payment was misdirected to the attacker's account. The company quickly caught the activity and has since taken the proper channels to recover the funds. At this time, no information has been provided how they addressed the threat, but it was noted that they did experience a financial loss. In this example, the company was a victim of an external business email compromise where the vendor's email was hacked. Had the employee verified the request with the vendor contact information they had on file, the potential loss could have been reduced or avoided entirely. Next up is a government attack in Puerto Rico. Government agencies lost more than $4 million due to corporate account takeover and business email compromise scams. In 2020, the email account for a finance employee at the Employment Retirement System was compromised. The attacker used the employee's email account, sending requests to colleagues at other agencies. Emails included instructions to change banking account information for remittance payments. Payment information was then changed to be directed to the hacker's account. Puerto Rico was able to freeze $2.9 million for recovery. This attack occurred over a period of time and through various transactions. Had there been more activity monitoring practices in place, the fraudulent transactions may have been caught sooner, thus reducing their loss. The third attack occurred at Manor Independent School District just outside of Austin, Texas. The school district lost $2.3 million in a business email compromise scam. Starting in November 2019, the attackers emailed several district employees requesting a change to payment instructions for a vendor. Only one employee fell for the email to make the change. 3 separate transactions took place before the incident was caught. The school district expects to recover $800,000 of the lost funds through an insurance policy, but they still suffered a $1.5 million net loss. An important takeaway here is that the hacker attempted several employees, but it only took one to cause such a significant loss. A small town, Ocala, Florida, is our next victim. In 2019, the town was targeted and lost $740,000 due to a business email compromise scam. The city's senior accounting specialist received an email from an accountant at the construction firm working on the airport terminal. The email requested a change to the payment information. After the firm called to say that the payment wasn't received, the city noticed the email address spoofed was for a former employee of the construction firm and was only 1 letter off. Officials filed an insurance claim hoping to recover some of the money. At this time, we don't know how much, if any, was recovered. BTG included this incident to demonstrate the size of your institution does not matter. Ocala, Florida is a small town in a state full of attractions with lots of opportunities and much larger targets. So a key takeaway here is if you hold valuable information for a hacker, you'll always be a target regardless of your size. And we saved our celebrity case study for last. Shark Tank's Barbara Corcoran has also been a victim of a social engineering cyber attack. The Sharks company suffered a $400,000 loss due to a business email compromise scam. In February 2020, a bookkeeper wired money to an attacker posing as Corcoran's assistant for a real estate renovation project. After the transaction was made, it was later found that the email addresses for the assistant was off by 1 letter. Fortunately for Corcoran, the wired funds needed to be processed through a correspondent bank. The attacker was traced to a Chinese IP address, and the money was recovered by contacting the correspondent bank and asking them to freeze the funds. Again, this attack was successful due to the email address being off by just one letter. As you can see from these case studies, social engineering, specifically business compromise email attacks in these examples, happen often and everyone is a target. Our goal for today's presentation is to not only increase your awareness of these cyber attacks, but also know how to avoid becoming a victim yourself. Social engineering attacks are real and they can have a detrimental financial impact. As we touched upon in our Manor Independent School case study, it only took one employee to fall for the ruse. This is why it's crucial to learn how to identify social engineering scams to protect yourself and your credit union. In this section, we will provide simple methods everyone can use to identify social engineering red flags and review email security best practices, do's and don'ts to help you protect your institution's exposure to social engineering cyber threats. In the following slides, we will dive into a detailed review of all red flags related to social engineering. First, taking a look at this sample email, we'd like to point out key indicators showing why this email should raise questions to the recipient. Let's review the content of the email. The CEO has emailed you to inform you their money and passport was stolen while in London and would like you to wire them $300 to purchase a ticket home, providing a link to transmit the funds. The content of the email should raise a few questions in your mind. First, would the CEO really email me to perform this task? Is this a function you would even be able to complete? Wouldn't the CEO need more than $300 to make their way back home? Also notice the link provided. At first glance, you may read Bank of America, but when you really look at it, it says Bank of Arnica. The M has been replaced with an R and an N to fool the recipient into clicking a fraudulent link. In this example, the hacker's goal is for the recipient to sense the urgency and to act and fulfill the request due to the sender's high position in the organization, and then ask questions later. Our social engineering red flags will dissect the parts of an email to help you identify when or if you've received a fraudulent email. Starting with the from field, there are some considerations that you need to review. I don't recognize the sender's email address as someone I ordinarily communicate with. When receiving a request to do something in an email, you should always know who the request is coming from or have an understanding why this person would communicate this request to you. This email is from someone outside my organization and it's not related to my job responsibilities. So consider to yourself, does this email make sense for me? This email was sent from someone inside the organization or from a customer, vendor, or partner and is very unusual or out of character. So through frequent correspondence, we all subconsciously notice how different people communicate. So if you receive an email from someone you regularly correspond with, but something seems off, trust your gut and contact the supposed sender directly by phone to verify the email's authenticity. Is the sender's email address from a suspicious domain name? It's important to look at the sender's domain as well as their name in the from field. For example, a popular scam is to pose as the support team for a well-known vendor. A simple misspelling can be easily overlooked, such as this example here. At first glance, it appears to say Microsoft support, but if you look closely, it says Microsoft. I don't know the sender personally, and they were not vouched for by someone I trust. If you receive an email from an unknown source and it cannot be verified, just simply do not go any further with the request. I don't have a business relationship nor any past communications with the seller. This simply should just raise a red flag. And this is an unexpected or unusual email with an embedded hyperlink or an attachment from someone I haven't communicated with recently. Never click on any links or attachments from unknown senders. If you receive an email with a link or attachment from a sender that you have not communicated with in a long period of time, you should refrain from opening the attachment or clicking the link until you're able to verify its authenticity. Next, we move on to the to field. I was CC'd on an email sent to one or more people, but I don't personally know the other people it was sent to. If you're included on an email with other recipients, you should be familiar with the other parties involved. If you're not, do not respond and notify the manager or IT team support for further review. I received an email that was also sent to an unusual mix of people. For instance, it might be sent to a random group of people at my organization whose last names start with the same letter, or a whole list of unrelated addresses. Also, the additional recipients should make sense. Is their purpose for receiving the email relatable to your purpose? If not, something doesn't seem right. It's also important to look at the date and subject lines. For the date, consider to yourself, did I receive an email that I normally would get during regular business hours, but it was sent at an unusual time, like 3 a.m.? This is an easy oversight, but an important one not to overlook. A business email request sent at an unusual time could be due to a different time zone where the cybercriminal may be located. And then our subject line. Did I get an email with a subject line that is irrelevant or does not match the message content? A true professional email should always make sense. The subject of the email should match the content. And is the email message a reply to something that I never sent or requested? This is also another common scam we've seen. The email subject line beginning with a reply status that you did not initiate should raise a red flag. Cybercriminals often use this tactic to trick the recipient, hoping that they will not realize they did not send the initial request. Next, we have content. So as we reviewed in our example, always consider the content of the email. Is the sender asking me to click on a link or open an attachment to avoid a negative consequence or gain something of value? Is the email out of the ordinary, or does it have bad grammar or spelling errors? Is the sender asking me to click a link or open an attachment that seems odd or illogical? Do I have an uncomfortable gut feeling about the sender's request to open an attachment or click a link? And is the email asking me to look at a compromising or embarrassing picture of myself or someone I know? In addition to the text content, it's also important to review any attachments that are included in the email prior to opening them. The sender included an email attachment that I was not expecting or that makes no sense in relation to the email. If an attachment doesn't make sense or makes you question its purpose, contact the sender directly with the contact information you have on file to verify its authenticity and reason before opening. I see an attachment with a possibly dangerous file type. So if you receive an attachment with an unfamiliar file type, do not open it and contact your management or IT support team to review first. So bottom line, whenever in doubt when receiving an attachment, always seek for additional review. And lastly, just as we review any attachments for relevancy, we must also review any hyperlinks that are attached. I hover my mouse over a hyperlink that displayed in the email message, but the link to address is for a different website. This is definitely a big red flag. So whenever you hover your mouse over a hyperlink, you can see where the URL will direct you to. If it does not direct you to a related site, that is a red flag that it's likely a fraudulent site. Do not proceed. I received an email that only has long hyperlinks with no further information, and the rest of the email is completely blank. Never click on a hyperlink without any context. I received an email with a hyperlink that is a misspelling for a known website. So think back to our sample email with Bank of America, where the M was 2 characters, the R and the N. It was intentionally misrepresented, so always scrutinize any hyperlinks that are provided to you within an email. Next, we'll talk about email security best practices, simple do's and don'ts. So let's start with the do's. Do check the from field to validate the sender. So again, validate the name of the sender and the email address attached to that name. Do check for spam attachments. So if you receive any attachments with file types that you're not familiar with, again, always have either your manager or a member of your IT support team review further before opening, just to ensure its safety. Do report all suspicious emails to your IT or manager, and do pay attention to email domains and address misspellings. So remember, as we discussed in our business case studies, even being off by just one letter is enough to fool you into clicking on either a fraudulent link, maybe changing payment instructions, or any other call to actions that a cyber criminal may be asking. Now on to the don'ts. Don't open any attachments that end with dangerous file types. So if there's any attachments that you're not sure of, always get a second opinion before you click to open. Don't click unsubscribe, delete instead. When receiving emails that offer the unsubscribe link, those links could also contain a virus or lead you to a fraudulent site. So rather than clicking unsubscribe, just simply delete the email and you'll be safe. Don't click on embedded links in messages without hovering your mouse over first to verify the URL. And don't respond or reply to spam emails. Delete instead. So again, replying or responding to a spam email will just verify that this is an active email account and also open the door to potential additional targeting from a cyber criminal. As we all know, email correspondence is a regular part of our everyday life, personally and professionally. For cyber criminals, every email address is an opportunity to gain access. So it's important to be aware that all employees are targets. So share your knowledge of social engineering and red flags. Be mindful of all email security with internal and external communications. And social engineering attacks and cybercrime can be mitigated if you remain diligent. All right, so now that we've reviewed various types of cyber threats, real-life case studies, social engineering red flags, and business email best practices, it's also important the institution has formal training and testing in place to prevent the avalanche effect that can come crashing down stemming from a seemingly small concern. Ways to prevent the avalanche include having information security policies and procedures in place. Perform active log monitoring. Your board and employee information security training should be performed to ensure that board members and employees are all aware of different types of cyber threats, associated risks, and prevention methods. Social engineering testing is a fantastic way to ensure that information obtained through these training sessions is also being practiced. IT and network security testing is also important to make sure that your controls are in place and working as expected. The testing can be accomplished by performing an IT audit, performing network vulnerability and penetration testing both internally and externally, and completing a cybersecurity risk assessment to ensure your credit union has necessary controls in place to prevent risk and identify the impact that would be if those risks were to occur. And lastly, perform an information security risk assessment that aligns with the NCUA's Part 748 requirement. These training and testing controls we recommend be put in place on an annual or more frequent basis to ensure consistent monitoring. All right, at this time, we're going to open up the forum for any questions you may have regarding cybersecurity and social engineering threats.
Hi, Jen. Thank you very much. That was excellent. I was taking notes the whole time. So a lot of great information. Yeah, we do have some questions. So if you don't mind, we'll just roll right into that.
Sure.
Okay. How do we perform a social engineering test is one of the questions we just received.
Yeah, that's a great question. Social engineering testing is usually an outsourced service. There's various companies that will do that. Here at BTG, we offer that as a service. We work with a company called KnowBe4, and what we offer here are social engineering tests that include both email and telephone tests. So we would provide spoofed emails to employees and track what the results are, if there were anyone who fell victim to our spoofed emails, or you can then see if internally it was reported to the management team or additional questions were raised. And then through the telephone, we would call to try to obtain some confidential information and see how far we can go through your front line, whether it's a customer call center or your teller lines. And then at the end of any social engineering event, you should receive a report detailing what the outcome of the testing was so that you can use it as a training tool for your employees, and then also use that report to satisfy any requirements from examiners.
So Jen, just to follow up on that, your reply, so are phone scams still pretty relevant? I mean, it feels like online and kind of through social media and email, but do phone scams, is that something, hackers or scammers will still try to attempt?
Sure. I don't want to say beginner level, but they're not as sophisticated as an online or an email scam would be, because telephone phishing could simply be a person impersonating a parent to try to gain information to perhaps their online banking account, or a criminal who's trying to impersonate one of your members so that they can then initiate maybe a wire transfer or any other kind of external transfer, or just gain enough information to collect that verifying information that you may have as a financial institution that they might need to use for, let's say, your credit card company. So those scams still do happen. They're not as so sophisticated, but your frontline staff is definitely your first line of defense in controlling how far a phishing attack can go through the telephone.
Okay. We also have a comment, just a comment from one of our participants that they use KnowBe4 also, and they find it to be a really great tool.
Good, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. So another question, you had mentioned that, there's been an increase in these kind of threats since the pandemic. Are there any specific COVID-19 related scams and attacks that you are aware of or you've come across?
Yeah, absolutely. COVID-19 related scams are absolutely out there. Unfortunately, they have been out there since COVID-19 really, took off. They range from fake websites for COVID-19 testing, even now COVID-19 vaccines. There'll be fake websites that ask for verifying information, even including your social security number for eligibility, so to speak. They've really been on the rise for phishing emails. A lot of those in various forms have gone out. Some of them phishing emails have been sent from seemingly known medical institutions, where they'll attach documents that obtain a known Microsoft vulnerability, and then deploying a malicious code, which again is why it's important to keep up to date with patch management, so that any of those known errors through Microsoft, for example, in this case, would be patched before that would even become an exploitation. There's also phishing scams related to COVID-19, especially now being tax season, where online you might see a website to lure a target in for a COVID-19 tax rebate. The targets would then be lured to a fake website that would collect financial information and other verifying information. And phone calls. So phony phone calls impersonating the CDC, where a hacker will try to obtain login credentials. And those are just a few to remain, but it's important to remember when you receive an email with a call to action, always scrutinize that email as we discussed, and verify the authenticity by either calling the sender with the contact information you have on file, or if it's not someone or a company that you regularly communicate with, look up their contact information. Don't use what's provided within that email or a voicemail that might be left for you.
Great. That's interesting. You don't think about all of the different types of scams, surrounding the pandemic.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it definitely is. Is a corrupt or malware link in an email more dangerous than a link from a web search?
That's a good question. The level of danger really depends on the content of the link and the email, or excuse me, the information that's captured through that exploitation. So for example, you may get an email where they're requesting that you provide login credentials. So that could potentially cause a higher impact than maybe clicking on a link that temporarily freezes your computer. So each exploitation has a different agenda. One could just be a cyber criminal testing to see if the exploitation is available, and then they'll continue on further to deploy a bigger attack. Or it could be a cyber criminal who has a known exploitation and targets a specific vendor, financial institution, whatever it may be. So again, just being mindful before you click is best practice. Even in your personal life, when you're surfing the web, just avoid going to websites that you're not familiar with or that you're not able to verify. A common thing that you will probably see on your personal experiences is when you're searching for something online, and then let's say you read a news article, you'll see pop-up ads related to that raincoat you were just looking at on a website you're aware of. That ad link could potentially be something malicious. So just always, if you're looking for something directly, it's best to go to the direct source or do your best to verify that source before going further.
Great. This is a specific question about ransomware attack. It said, the question is, are there ways to recover from a ransomware attack without paying the ransom?
We get this question often because obviously none of us want to pay a cyber criminal for doing wrong. Yes, it's possible. Most likely it would not be a seamless or timely recovery. You may lose some data files or accessibility for a period of time. So what we always recommend is if you are hit with a ransomware attack, definitely first thing you should do is disconnect that infected computer from the network to stop the spread. And then contact your IT recovery team or any IT resources that you contract out to identify which type of ransomware attack was deployed. And then they can then help decipher which files might have been impacted. Also, contact the police and discuss with your management team and your board if ransom is paying the ransom is the best solution, because depending on what has been encrypted, you need to determine if the cost of paying the ransom or not paying the ransom will outweigh the cost of recovering any impacted data and downtimes.
Right. Follow up to that, why are ransomware victims usually requested to pay in Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is one of those currencies that it's hard to narrow down. There's not it's not an actual monetary currency that we could, go to the grocery store and say, oh, I'll pay for my groceries in Bitcoin, but they could use Bitcoin to purchase, perhaps, as we mentioned, on the dark web, they may use Bitcoin to purchase another ransomware as a service attack. So they can use Bitcoin to exchange for other, dark web services. To them, especially in getting login credentials or a ransomware attack where they can obtain information that they can then sell on the dark web, as we mentioned, the identity theft or debit card numbers, their profits are huge. So when they might exchange something for Bitcoin in ransomware, they might make up for an actual currency somewhere else.
Got it. So are Bluetooth devices susceptible to hackers? Are our headphones at risk?
Yeah, simply put, yes. Any form of technology is susceptible to hackers. Bluetooth devices are easily identifiable when they're in close proximity. So just think when you have your handset, your mobile phone or your tablet, and you're trying to connect a speaker or your headphones, you can see which Bluetooth devices are, available. Fortunately, this is not a cyber threat that's gained much traction within the financial industry. It's mostly centered towards mobile devices. The best way to protect yourself and your institution when using mobile devices from becoming a victim is to ensure that your system updates are maintained when you're connecting your Bluetooth devices. So again, patch management, when you have your mobile devices, if you're notified that there is a system update available, don't push that off for a long period of time, because it's important to get those updates so that those patches are applied. Because for Bluetooth, for example, when you set up your Bluetooth, you want to make sure you have the most current version available. Otherwise, older versions might have some vulnerabilities, and given the wrong place at the wrong time, a hacker can exploit those vulnerabilities. So a couple ways you can protect yourself when using Bluetooth, because it is a part of our everyday life. On your mobile devices, most of them have menu options within the settings where you can turn your Bluetooth on and off as you need, and also using Bluetooth connectivity for trusted devices only. I'm sure all different mobile devices have different settings, but something along those lines will be your best option for protection.
Yeah, that's really good to know, since almost everyone I know uses,
including myself.
Yeah, me too, the same. We have two more questions. One,
sure.
How is it possible for a criminal to make an email look like it came from your own email server? So your organization's email server.
Yeah, so there's essentially two big ways that this could happen. One, as we touched upon, a criminal can make an email appear to come from your own email server simply by structuring letters, adding punctuations, or misspelling a name. For myself, my maiden name is Connolly, and a lot of people will put an O where there's an E, and a simple oversight like that is so small, but enough to carry forward a call to action request. Or a spoofed email can also be simply having the same name, but a completely different email domain. So you could receive an email from Jay Connolly at Buckley Technology, or excuse me, an email that says from Jennifer Connolly McGee, but it's really, I love tea at google.com. But if you don't pay attention to the domain name and just looking at the name in the from field, that's one way it can happen. A second way it can happen is through business email compromise. So this actually happens when your login credentials for your email has been attacked by a cyber criminal. So they actually do log in as yourself on your credit union's email account, and then they'll pose as you with a request action, but have your email, they could have your email responses directed to another email. So if you're present at work and you're just working away and someone's impersonating you, those requests to your emails can be redirected and you would be none the wiser. So again, for that type of email compromise, keeping your password secure, personal to yourself, is really very critical, because that type of email scam may take a little bit longer to detect depending on what those call to actions are.
Right. Yep. And the last question, how can you protect your devices when using a public Wi-Fi or hotspot?
Sure. So whenever you're using a public Wi-Fi, I know it's very convenient and they're everywhere. If you have to use a public Wi-Fi, don't go to anything that you wouldn't want to share publicly. So don't use it for online banking. Definitely do not use it for any business-related activities. Just it's public Wi-Fi because it's available to the public. There's no controls in place. If you do need to use your internet on any of your mobile devices and you don't have, or you have access to public Wi-Fi, but you need to access things that are confidential, or you don't want to risk being exposed, the best way to move forward is to connect to your data plan, because that would be secured. Or if you're in an area where there is there's public Wi-Fi, but there might also be a secure connection available, whether it be because you have to know an employee or maybe you have to pay a fee for that, that would be the way to go. But bottom line, when you're in a public Wi-Fi atmosphere, everything you're accessing is public. The only way to keep that locked down is to be mindful of what you're accessing, or just avoid using it completely and use the data within the mobile device you're using.
Okay. Well, thank you. That looks to be all of the questions. And with that, that concludes today's program. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks to Buckley Technology Group for the time in this presentation. This was an excellent presentation, a lot of great information.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, to all our participants, the recording of today's webinar will be available on MSIC's YouTube channel by early next week. I'll be in touch to let you know when and where to access it. And also a copy of today's presentation will be emailed to all of today's attendees. Lastly, just keep an eye out for an email regarding our next upcoming webinar next month on Wednesday, March 24th. It will be a 1-hour virtual presentation about creating inclusion in the workplace. And you should see that in the next day or so.